Over the past 10 months, vaccines have helped save millions of lives. And together with extraordinary policy support, this has allowed us to push forward, moving from crisis towards recovery. But that is only part of the story. We face a global recovery that remains hobbled by the pandemic and its impact. We are unable to walk forward properly. It is like walking with stones in our shoes. Let's look at the economic picture. In July, we projected global growth at 6% in 2021. As you will see in our updated World Economic Outlook next week, we now expect growth to moderate slightly this year. But the risks and obstacles to a balanced global recovery have become even more pronounced. The stones in our shoes have become more painful. The first is the divergence in economic growth. Economic output in advanced economies is projected to return to pre-pandemic trends by 2022, by next year. But most emerging and developing countries will take many more years to recover. This delayed recovery will make it even more difficult to avoid long-term economic scarring. The second stone in our shoe is inflation. While we do expect price pressures to subside in most countries in 2022, in some emerging and developing economies, price pressures are expected to persist. One particular concern with inflation is the rise in global food prices, up by more than 30% over the past year. Together with rises in energy prices, this is putting further pressure on poorer families. And that brings me to the third stone, debt. We estimate that global public debt has increased to almost 100% of GDP. Much of this reflects the necessary fiscal response to the crisis, as well as the heavy output and revenue losses due to the pandemic. Many started the pandemic with very little fiscal firepower. Now, they have even less room in their budgets and very limited ability to issue new debt at favorable terms. In short, they face tough times and are caught on the wrong side of the fiscal financing divide. So how do we go about removing these stones from our shoes and overcoming these divisions and obstacles to recovery? So here is our answer. Vaccinate, calibrate, accelerate. First, vaccinate the world. We can still reach the targets put forward by the IMF with the World Bank, WHO, and WTO to vaccinate at least 40% of people in every country by the end of this year and at least 70% by the first half of 2022. But we need a bigger push. We must sharply increase delivery of doses to the developing world. Let's go to the second piece of our answer. Calibrate policies to country circumstances. The longer the pandemic is with us, the more persistent the divisions between countries will be, and the more difficult and varied the policy choices become. This brings me to the third policy imperative: accelerate the reforms needed to transform economies. Amid the sweeping global changes in the years and decades ahead, we see three priority issues for economic and financial stability: climate change, technological change, inclusion. We know that fighting climate change is critical for the planet and for prosperity. The dire warnings of the recent IPCC report on climate change leave us in no doubt that we must act, and we must act now. The digital revolution also presents enormous opportunities. Scaling up digital infrastructure investment is key, combined with investment in people's education, in skills, in health, in basic research. This is how we can make economies more productive and more inclusive. Now we should use this clarity of thought and the lessons from the crisis to remove the obstacles in our way, remove the stones from our shoes, and walk forward to a better future for all. Molte grazie.